the fear of the power of the white man.
Svojím revolučním pohybom otvorilo nám
que fueron los primeros que lucharon por la libertad.
Ce journal, dont les journalistes sont tués.
This has happened in my own country.
Je prends ici la parole qu'on me confisque dans mon pays.
Kosovo se trouve dans une situation extrêmement dramatique.
Do centro de poder democrático.
Cargos electos no nacionalistas son asesinados.
A sustained dialogue of tolerance.
Andrei Sájarov al pueblo de Cuba.
The situation is all the more tragic.
На свободную, нецензурированную.
It has to be reformed and it has to be reviewed.
Эта премия так само молодых лидеров.
Gives me the opportunity to speak to you.
状态就是说警察围困的状态。
Чечне, вообще на Северном Кавказе.
Cuando vas a permitir las libertades.
The specter of war is haunting our world.
Still, there is hope.
C'est dramatique, il faut que ça s'arrête.
No human life, free.
يتفكك تحت ثقل الإبادة.
Tenemos que tener libertad.
Боролись и борются за свою свободу.
Now, the Uyghur people need you.
Belarus, where justice and truth prevail.
Andrei Sakharov was a Russian physicist who helped develop the hydrogen bomb. But later he campaigned against nuclear weapons and advocated for human
Signore e signori, onorevoli colleghi, oggi siamo riuniti qui per conferire il premio Sakharov per la libertà di pensiero ad Alexei Navalny. La sedia vuota in questo emiciclo sta a simboleggiare ancora una volta, purtroppo, che un vincitore del nostro premio è privato della libertà. Con nostro profondo rammarico, Alexei Navalny non può essere qui con noi oggi perché è ingiustamente detenuto in un carcere della Federazione Russa. Sono però onoratissimo di avere con noi Daria Navalnaya, che è la figlia di Alexei Navalny, che oggi è qui per rappresentarlo, insieme al suo capo di gabinetto Leonid Volkov. È con noi anche Kira Yarmish, addetta stampa di Alexei. A nome del Parlamento Europeo vorrei esprimere a tutti voi il nostro benvenuto al Parlamento Europeo e ringraziarvi di essere qui. Vi invito però subito a guardare insieme un video che è dedicato al vincitore di quest'anno del premio Sakharov. Prego.
Russia is being run as a kleptocracy, as a regime which primary purpose is corruption, is to squeeze funds from wherever possible.
And when someone like Navalny tries to prevent it, that's when human rights violations start. And then thousands of people are arrested at protest rallies. What Alexei Navalny has done recently goes far beyond the particular issue of fighting corruption. It's no longer just a fight against corruption, but a fight for basic human values, a fight for life.
Signore e signori, onorevoli colleghi, il 2021 è l'anno in cui ricorre il centenario di Andrei Sakharov e la sua lotta pacifica per promuovere i diritti umani e il suo coraggio nell'affrontare il regime sovietico repressivo e brutale hanno ispirato il premio che oggi stiamo per attribuire. Andrei Sakharov sarebbe forse triste e al tempo stesso però anche orgoglioso di sapere che a più di 30 anni dalla caduta del comunismo il premio che porta il suo nome è conferito oggi ad Alexei Navalny, suo compatriota. E se la tristezza può essere motivata dal fatto che oggi il regime politico russo è colpevole di reprimere le organizzazioni della società civile, di limitare la libertà dei media, di mettere in prigione gli oppositori politici, senza dubbio, senza alcun dubbio, Sakharov sarebbe orgoglioso della determinazione con cui Alexei Navalny sta lottando per i diritti umani e le libertà fondamentali. Il coraggio che ha dimostrato Alexei desta stupore e ammirazione. Lo hanno minacciato, maltrattato, avvelenato, arrestato, incarcerato, ma non sono riusciti a metterlo a tacere. Ha lottato instancabilmente per il popolo russo, in veste di attivista contro la corruzione. È stato candidato politico ed è un blogger e un avvocato. In altre parole, la sua azione per la libertà di pensiero e di espressione è qui oggi da noi riconosciuta come un valore assoluto. Come una volta lui stesso ha affermato, la corruzione prospera quando manca il rispetto dei diritti umani. E io credo che abbia ragione. La lotta alla corruzione è una lotta per il rispetto dei diritti umani universali ed è certamente una lotta per la dignità umana, per il buon governo e per lo Stato di diritto. È per difendere questi principi che Alexei è stato privato della libertà e ha quasi perso la vita. È un prigioniero politico e a nome del Parlamento Europeo chiedo il suo rilascio immediato e incondizionato. Come ogni anno chiedo anche con urgenza il rilascio di tutti gli altri vincitori del premio Sakharov. Non li dimentichiamo, non li dimenticheremo, che sono ancora in carcere. Ilham Tohti, Nasrim Sotoudeh, Aymara Nieto, Raif Badawi, Sergei Tsikhanouski, Mikalai Statkevich. 2 sono vincitori del premio 2020 e sono stati ingiustamente condannati ieri dal regime illegittimo bielorusso a 18 e a 15 anni di carcere. Una vergogna, perché tra le centinaia di prigionieri politici in Bielorussia ci sono 4 vincitori del premio Sakharov, Maria Koleskinova e Ales Bialystsy. Altri vincitori del premio Sakharov stanno subendo vessazioni. È il caso del dottor Mukwege, che si trova a far fronte a un allarmante aumento delle intimidazioni e delle minacce di morte. È anche il caso di Memorial, l'organizzazione vincitrice del premio 2009, nonché una delle voci più antiche e importanti a difesa delle libertà fondamentali in Russia, che è attualmente sottoposta a un processo di liquidazione. In un mondo in cui i regimi autoritari e le forze populiste attaccano i diritti umani e compromettono le libertà fondamentali, tutti questi, vincitori del premio Sakharov e fra loro naturalmente Alexei Navalny, stanno dimostrando a tutti noi che con il loro esempio cosa significa lottare per la libertà. Sono una fonte di ispirazione per tutti coloro che sognano una società migliore e più giusta in Russia, ma non solo. Il Parlamento Europeo non risparmierà gli sforzi per sostenere le loro battaglie e per proteggerli. Io e tutto il Parlamento Europeo attendiamo con impazienza il giorno in cui Alexei Navalny potrà tornare al Parlamento Europeo, qui da noi, a ritirare di persona il premio Sakharov. Adesso do la parola alla signora Navalny, ai deputati al Parlamento Europeo di tutti gli Stati membri che sono presenti o collegati a distanza. Sono ansiosi di ascoltarla. Grazie.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. This is truly incredible. Before I start my speech, I wanted to tell everyone how incredibly grateful I am to be here accepting this award for my father, and at the same time, absolutely terrified. This is a big honor for me to be able to stand here in front of all of you. And as a 20-year-old college student who doesn't know much about politics, I'm very much afraid and anxious to mess this up. Thank you. Thank you. When I first heard that my dad, Alexei Navalny, was giving the Sakharov Prize, I was extremely happy for two reasons. The first one, this is a tremendous honor, recognition of his merits, and a high praise of the work that has been done and is continuing to be done by him and his co-workers. And most importantly, it's a signal to those tens of millions of citizens in my country who are continuing to fight for the better fate of Russia. I will also name the second reason. Although it's a little frank and awkward, my father is receiving this award from the European Parliament, and when you receive such an award, you get to come and speak in front of the European Parliament. Unfortunately, for obvious reasons, he wasn't able to be here today, and I thought to myself, well, I guess someone better run and get that ticket to Strasbourg and seize the opportunity to come and, well, see this wonderful thing for myself. And over some time, I realized that this might actually be what the nightmare of myself and my family looks like. Me traveling from different conferences and summits, giving speeches in my dad's name. Sometimes he's even awarded something, but I'm the one traveling. I'm the one writing the speech and starting it with a joke while he's in jail. And I will continue traveling, meanwhile reading articles about the horrible conditions my dad is being held in. It's not like there's much to do about it, so I travel and speak, and he continues to be held in confinement. And this doesn't only concern Alexei Navalny. We're the last year's laureates, the Belarus opposition now, mostly in prison. Where's the 2010 Nobel Peace Prize laureate Liu Xiaobo? He died in prison. And here I ask myself today, why is it so hard to free from captivity those who are fighting for human rights? Why are they still thrown in jail, not only all over the world, but in geographically European countries in the 21st century? Europe is great and almighty. The will of the European citizens is expressed by the resolutions of the members of the European Parliament, and those are precise, correct, and fair resolutions. They're supported by the United Kingdom, United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the whole free world. But those who are like my father continue sitting in prison, watching more and more of their allies being thrown behind bars. You know, I've heard this many times, and sure I will again, maybe even in the corridors after this ceremony. You know, Dasha, they'll say to me, I understand why you're feeling this way, because it concerns your family and close ones. But in the real world, however, we have to be more pragmatic. And in those hallways, I'll nod my head and say, yes, of course, what else I can say? I'm a 20-year-old college student, and I don't feel very comfortable arguing with experienced and responsible pragmatics. However, here today, taking advantage of the fact that I have the microphone, no one will take it away from me, and I don't have to argue with anyone personally, feeling impolite. I would like to oppose that pragmatism. This is the Sakharov Prize. Thank you. This is the Sakharov Prize, and Andrei Sakharov was probably one of the most non-pragmatic people on the planet. I don't understand why those who advocate for pragmatic relations with dictators can't simply open the history books. It would be a very pragmatic act, and having it done, it's very easy to understand the inescapable political law. The pacification of dictators and tyrants never works. No matter how many people try to deceive themselves, hoping that another madman who clings to power will behave decently in response to concessions and flirtations, it will never happen. The very essence of authoritarian power involves a constant increase in bets, an increase in aggression, and the search for new enemies. And those who once said, let's not push Lukashenko and continue the dialogue when he was beating people up and throwing them behind bars, achieve only that now, in order to sentence someone, Lukashenko has to stop a whole passenger plane. Another thing that pragmatists don't want to do for some reason, which urges them to remember about the expenses and economic losses, is simply to pick up a calculator and see how much their pragmatism costs, in particular to the European taxpayers. Years of flirting with Putin made it clear to him that to increase his ratings, he can start a war. How much will the war with Ukraine cost to Europe? Even now, with so many news on Russian troops coming to the Ukraine border, no one's really talking about it. No pragmatic trade cooperation will recoup the share of the direct loss that will have to be incurred. Not to mention the cost of the time of the Western politicians like yourselves have already spent on solving the problem instead of dealing with their own affairs in their own countries. One of the opposition leaders, Boris Nemtsov, is killed with shots in the back right by the Kremlin. And then comes the pragmatist and says, well, we can't do much about it. Let's limit ourselves to a tough statement and then continue the conversation. And then they'll kill the second and the third, and the fourth will be killed in the center of Berlin, and the fifth in the UK. And then they also blow up some warehouses in Europe, and then they start killing with chemical weapons. And now we know what we know is just unsuccessful assassination attempts. How many were successful? We already know that a real terrorist group has been created inside Putin's special services, killing citizens of my country without a hearing or a trial, without justice. They were close to killing my mother. They nearly killed my father. And no one will guarantee that tomorrow European politicians won't start falling dead by simply touching a doorknob. And now, you're already increasing the police budget. You give a lot of money to special services, spend billions on new ways to detect those toxic substances, and these are the consequences of pragmatism. Don't push it. We need to act carefully and not anger them, says the pragmatist. And tomorrow, dictators inspired by half measures of the West will transport thousands of people to the border of the European Union, forcing women and children to storm the fences and secretly dreaming of someone being shot or trampled in the crowd. Let pragmatists answer how much will it cost Poland or Lithuania or the entire European Union. They will answer to me. What do you want? These are sovereign states. They have their own governments. Our capabilities are very limited. Are you proposing a nuclear war to free the political prisoners? Of course, I don't propose starting a war. However, I will note that although it's not successful, it has started, and there are real victims, and they're using both cyber and chemical weapons. The fact that European banks freely launder corrupted billions of Putin and his friends, the yachts of Putin's oligarchs continue being sensations on European Mediterranean, that 99% of top officials of Russia and Belarus directly involved in crimes are all still freely allowed to travel in Europe, just like their families, are all sure signs that many of those who make decisions don't even try to win at least the small wars in this battle. They talk too much and think about the realm of politics, considering actions based on ideas and principles, which frankly are naive and stupid. And you know what? It seems to me that the problem is that the desire to appeal to the dictators again and again, not to anger him, to ignore his crimes as long as it's possible, is not a pragmatic approach at all. It's time to say it straight. Under the sign of pragmatism, there is cynicism, hypocrisy, and corruption. There's a constant war between idealism and pragmatism. There are fierce battles in the European politics, but even choosing the side of pragmatism shouldn't mean betraying your ideas. When I wrote to my dad and asked, what exactly do you want me to say in the speech from your point, he answered, say that that no one can dare to equate Russia to Putin's regime. Russia is a part of Europe, and we strive to become a part of it. But we also... Thank you. But we also want Europe to strive for itself, to those amazing principles which are at its core. We strive for Europe of ideas, the celebration of human rights, democracy, and integrity. And we don't want Europe of chancellors and ministers who dream of getting a job on the board of Putin's state-owned companies or sailing on oligarchs' yachts. Today, on this stage, receiving this high, amazing award for my father, Alexei Navalny, I thank you, and through all of you, I welcome the Europe of ideas and principles. European Union is an incredible miracle created by nations whose whole history is an endless war with each other. Despite all the difficulties and problems, however, the EU has and will encounter, I believe that in its future, that one day my country will become a part of it. To finish this speech, I want to quote a great compatriot of mine in whose honor this award was named. My destiny was in some sense exceptional, not because of false modesty, but because of a wish to be accurate, and I know that my destiny has turned out to be larger than my personality. I simply tried to live up to my own destiny. I hope we all have the strength to live up to our destinies. Freedom to Alexei Navalny. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon. The session will continue now. So I please ask you to either take your seat or leave the room. The session will continue. Gostaria de começar por um anúncio para informar que o PPE comunicou ao Presidente algumas decisões de alteração das nomeações feitas para comissões. Essas decisões constarão da ata da sessão de hoje e produzirão efeitos a partir da data do presente anúncio. Depois, antes de iniciar o período de votação de hoje, gostaria de dar a palavra, nos termos do artigo 59, número 4, ao deputado Andreas Schwab sobre a devolução à Comissão para as Negociações Interinstitucionais do seu relatório sobre o regulamento dos mercados digitais. Tem a palavra o deputado Schwab.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Gemäß Artikel 49 Absatz 4 der Geschäftsordnung möchte ich gerne darum bitten, den Digital Markets Act nach Abstimmung in den Ausschuss zurückzuverweisen, um interinstitutionelle Verhandlungen beginnen zu können. Herzlichen Dank.
Muito obrigado, caro colega. Esse pedido será submetido à votação após a votação da proposta da Comissão. E passamos agora ao período de votação de hoje e gostaria então de vos recordar que votaremos os dossiês conforme indicado na ordem do dia. O período de votação decorrerá entre as 12h40 e as 13h45. A votação é feita segundo o mesmo procedimento utilizado no período de votação anterior. E todas as votações serão realizadas por votação nominal. Declaro então aberto o período de votação. Os colegas podem votar até às 13h45. Os resultados das votações serão comunicados às 19 horas, como prevista. Os nossos debates serão retomados às 15 horas, com o debate sobre assuntos de atualidade ao abrigo do artigo 162 do Regimento. Em particular, orientações da Comissão Europeia relativas à utilização de linguagem inclusiva. A nossa sessão está agora sim suspensa. Muito obrigado. va falloir que tu sortes.
Oh, alors là.
Tout de suite.
Les mecs qui font ça.
Parce que je sais plus.
Pour cette conférence de presse qui fait suite à la cérémonie du prix Sakharov pour la liberté d'esprit 2021. Nous sommes ici bien sûr avec le président du Parlement européen, M. David Sassoli, avec Daria Navalnaya, qui est la fille d'Alexei Navalny, et Leonid Volkov, qui est aussi son chef de cabinet. Je donne tout de suite la parole au président Sassoli.
Sì, buongiorno a tutti, grazie per la vostra presenza. È una giornata importante per il Parlamento europeo perché stiamo ribadendo il nostro impegno per la difesa dei diritti fondamentali e quest'anno la scelta di Alexei Navalny come premio Sakharov rappresenta davvero quello che il premio Sakharov vuole rappresentare, una difesa di tutti coloro che si battono per la difesa delle libertà, della democrazia e in questo momento le condizioni di Alexei sono serie, è detenuto ingiustamente. Questo premio Sakharov oggi vuole dire anche che il Parlamento europeo chiede con fermezza il rilascio immediato e incondizionato di Alexei Navalny. Questo è il significato di questo premio, che non è retorico, ma che impone al Parlamento europeo nuovi impegni. Abbiamo una grande comunità, purtroppo, di premi Sakharov che sono ancora detenuti e il nostro impegno è per tutti coloro che si trovano privati della libertà. Abbiamo l'anno scorso concesso il premio Sakharov all'opposizione bielorussia, quest'anno abbiamo lavorato con l'opposizione bielorussa in tante iniziative, loro sono venuti tante volte al Parlamento europeo, ci auguriamo che naturalmente anche Navalny e Volkov, a nome di Alexei, siano attivi quest'anno per promuovere iniziative. Vogliamo essere accanto ai nostri premi Sakharov. Grazie.
Grazie Presidente. Mr. Volkov, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much to the European community, to the European Parliament for awarding the Sakharov Prize for Alexei, and not only for Alexei himself, but to the whole team. What we have achieved in Russia, it's a team effort, a huge independent NGO that Alexei has created, all the investigations that we have done during the last 10 years, a work and tremendous achievement of investigative journalism, first of all. And, well, this brought us there where we are, with our founder and leader, my friend, poisoned, then tortured, imprisoned, with new charges mounting, with 6 new charges to be considered by the Russian court very soon, with a very predictable outcome. A lot of terrible news, actually, these days. And we need to stay optimists. It's our job requirements. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to continue doing what we are doing. And, of course, we need some food for optimism. And the Sakharov Prize gives us such a reason. It's important in this regard. It's very important because it is awarded by the European Parliament, a legislative body, elected by and representing 450 million Europeans. It's delegated through the members of European Parliament to us, and it's very important for us, for our movement, because we are a pro-European movement. As Daria said in her acceptance speech, that's if we had to describe our political idea in a few words, we want Russia to become a European country. It is geographically, but we want to bring it there politically, economically, culturally. We want Russia to be a credible partner, friend, cooperator for the whole European family. And this is very much feasible because there is one little obstacle, only one, Vladimir Putin, him personally. Alexei Navalny is his personal prisoner. Vladimir Putin is personally accountable for the attempt of murder of Alexei Navalny a year ago. And, well, during this Sakharov week, we were talking a lot. I met all of you personally or in group and press conferences, 40-something interviews, one-on-ones in groups, and so on, and everyone was asking, like, what should we do? What should Europe do better? What's next for the democratic opposition in Russia, and so on, so on. Well, the answer is quite simple. Target the reason of all this current wrongdoing. Don't try to fight the consequences, but try to oppose the very reason. And it is Vladimir Putin, personally. And I was talking here for many hours on Alexei Navalny's behalf as a member of his political organization, as a representative of our team, in all these capacities, but now, as Daria was talking very personally, it struck me that I never talked in my probably most important capacity as Alexei's friend. Vladimir Putin tried to kill my friend. I really very much want him to be punished. He deserves being punished for that. And we are very sure this will happen one day. But for this to happen, we ask the European community to stop treating and considering Putin as an equal, as a credible world leader, as a representative of our country. He is not. Russia is not Putin, and Putin is not Russia. And he's just an international terrorist, and that's the attitude he deserves, the only attitude he deserves. Thank you so much, and let's leave as much time as possible for your questions.
Thank you very much. So we open now some time for questions. Starting by yourself, please. Yes.
Piotr Żabik, Radio Z Poland. I have a question to Daria. And how does political situation influence to young people in Russia? It's quite difficult to be a European young person in Russia? Thank you.
To be a European young person in Russia, can you elaborate on that?
How life young people in Russia is different than compared in the European young persons? Thanks.
Well, first and foremost, in European countries, you can oppose the government, go to protests, and not get sentenced or jailed for that. So it's a very different condition than what's happening in the European Parliament. In the European countries. I feel like that's the most important. For me, personally, an ideal country, Russia, the bright Russia of the future, would be a country where you can politically oppose the government, the regime, and not be sentenced for it.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Anna Bandensky from Europe Diplomatic. I have a first question to the guest, if you allow, Mr. President, to Mr. Volkov, because Sakharov Prize is one prize to one person, but there are 400 political prisoners now in Russia. So what can be the steps that Europe can practically undertake, I mean the European Union, to help to liberate all these people? And my question goes to Mr. President. Mr. President, my question to you, because you wholeheartedly now support the liberation of Alexei Navalny, but there is one more prisoner in Europe, which is also very high profile, Mr. Assange. So why you don't support this campaign of human rights defenders to liberate Assange?
For your question to political prisoners, indeed, Russia has over 400 political prisoners now, which is the largest amount since Stalin times. Every Soviet leader after Stalin had less political prisoners than President Putin now has in Russia. And you know why we know that there are over 400 political prisoners in Russia now? Who does the list? It's Memorial. Memorial is the organization who does the official list of political prisoners in Russia. And most probably Memorial, founded by Andrei Sakharov, will be declared an illegal organization, outlawed and shut down in Russia very soon. They actually wanted to do it yesterday on the anniversary of Sakharov's death, but they decided to delay it for a couple of weeks, December 28th, when, no one is watching political news. This is a terrible situation, but every political prisoner, it's not only a terrible thing, but it's also a breach of international laws, of international obligations that Russia has. Russia is a member of the Council of Europe, and for every political prisoner, there is a verdict of European Court of Human Rights right here in the city of Strasbourg, which declared this person to be unlawfully arrested and demanded for it released. Only that Russia does not act upon its international obligations. So what can be done? I still hear European Western politicians talking, okay, but we still need to talk to President Putin. We need Russia on this, we need Russia on that, this is important and so on. This approach lacks very basic logic. Vladimir Putin violated his word, violated Russia's international obligation on every matter possible, on Ukraine, Minsk agreements, on human rights, on chemical weapons, and so on. So why should we keep talking to him? I mean, we don't talk for the sake of talking, right? We talk to enter some new agreement, to sign something. If we know that he has no respect for his own word, he has no credibility, he has a proven track record of not complying with his obligations, of violating them whenever possible. So, in our opinion, the approach should be different. To become part of international relations once again, and Putin desires it very much, he has to prove his credibility, which means he has to fulfill his existing obligations, which means to release political prisoners, for instance, and only then could be he allowed to participate in some international relations once again. And this is actually a huge leverage that Europe has on Putin and should execute.
Thank you, President.
Lei mi chiedeva di Assange. Io le ricordo che non siamo tutti uguali. Non siamo uguali alla Russia. I paesi dell'Europa, i paesi occidentali non sono uguali, non hanno lo stesso sistema giudiziario della Russia. Certo, la libertà di informazione non può essere messa in discussione, ma le autorità giudiziarie dei nostri paesi hanno la libertà per decidere su questa vicenda. Possono farlo in autonomia e in indipendenza. E questo è molto importante. E quindi la difesa di Assange deve essere garantita. Non siamo uguali. E mettere sullo stesso piano i sistemi giudiziari della Federazione Russa e quelli dei paesi dell'Unione Europea è ingiusto. E questo non lo riconosciamo. Grazie.
Yeah, further questions, please.
Michael Magerkort from Eurojournalist here from Strasbourg. I have a question to maybe both of you. I would just like to know, you maybe had been very close to Mr. Navalny after he'd been in Berlin for the treatment after the intoxication. And when he was planning to return, what did he expect to happen? Exactly what happened, or had he another expectation what role he can take in Russia after, or what was your impression?
Well, I can only speak as his daughter because we don't really discuss politics usually. There was never any questions that he was going to come back or not to Russia. The expectation probably, I mean, we understood that he was going to be imprisoned or jailed, but I feel like not from the airport. The fact that they immediately took him away at the airport as soon as he crossed the border was the most, I feel like, shocking, because it was just so outrageous that they decided to grab him from the airport, not even allowing him to go back home, to talk to his parents, to members of our family. Yeah, but Leonid could speak more on the political aspect of it. Thank you.
No, we never actually even had this discussion. Even from the moment when he was still in coma in Berlin, we all knew that he will try to get back home as soon as possible, as soon as he recovers. This was never a subject of discussion. Like, we never had a round table debate with the team, like pros and cons and so on, because we know, we knew, and he knew he's just doing the right thing, the moral thing. And he's a very moral-driven man. It's a very important thing to understand about him.
Thank you. Tamás.
Thank you. Tamás Foti from the Hungarian press. As Mr. Volkov, you visited probably Mr. Navalny, you talked to him. What is his experience with his inmates? Do they know who is Mr. Navalny? And also, Daria, if I may ask you, what kind of solidarity you experience in Russia? Thank you.
So, I never had a chance to visit him because while there are 6 criminal charges in Russia against Alexei Navalny, there are 7 charges against me. I temporarily live out of the country for a couple of years in friendly and welcoming Lithuania in Vilnius. Last time I saw him in person was actually in Berlin when he was boarding the plane to go back to Moscow. We are able to maintain contact through the lawyers who are able to visit him and to relay the messages and to get information from him back. Actually, he remains very active politically. We discuss all our political projects. He is not only a symbol of our movement, but also a leader. He works pretty much full time, discussing all strategical things with us. But as far as his conditions are concerned, Daria, who has seen him in person, will probably elaborate more, but I can say one thing. They find it online. Russia's last independent TV station, TV Rain, recently published a documentary, a report, based on interviews with his former inmates that told actually a lot, that testified on record about the actual conditions. And to make a long story short, all kind of pressure and torture is applied to him, but physical torture. No one is allowed to beat him up, but any other nasty thing they could think of, they are allowed to apply, to break him, to break his spirit and so on. But he remains strong.
Yes, in terms of his conditions in prison, I visited him twice. Once was after his hunger strike in the summer, which wasn't very ideal for me as a child to see their parent like that. And yes, but now I saw him the last time in September, and he's doing much better. Thank you for asking. He is working out and eating well and doing all the active things that you can possibly do to continue feeling well in the conditions that he is in. And can I ask you to repeat the question for me? Sorry.
What kind of solidarity you experience?
Yes.
From the Russian people?
I experience, well, there's a lot of solidarity with coming from my dad's supporters to me as a child. And I feel like the most solidarity that I've experienced was actually in my schools and my educational environments, which I really appreciated. There have been instances in my middle school where the teachers weren't were very much opposed to what my father is doing, but later on, in the high school, it's been great. All the teachers are extremely supportive. My friends are very nice, and even what I've noticed, that even if someone opposes my father's views, they understand that it could be a peaceful discussion and it doesn't have to be aggressive. And this is what I'm mainly looking forward to when talking about democratizing Russia, is having an open discussion without throwing someone in jail. Thank you.
E l'ultima domanda la prendiamo dal online, Eurofonica in Italia, Marta Gigli. Marta, you have to push the speak button.
Buongiorno Presidente, signora Navalnaya e signor Volkov. Sono Marta Gigli per Eurofonica Italia. La mia domanda è per la signora Navalnaya. Il Presidente Sassoli nell'emiciclo ha marcato la necessità di sostenere il popolo russo nel suo desiderio di cambiare il proprio paese, e gli atti di questo cambiamento passano necessariamente attraverso la società civile, e il signor Navalny, decidendo di tornare in Russia, è riuscito a lanciare un messaggio coraggioso. L'opposizione politica in Russia esiste, può e deve far sentire la sua voce. Purtroppo però ad oggi nel paese l'opinione pubblica sta vivendo delle sfide consistenti per quanto riguarda la libertà di pensiero e di stampa. Vorrei quindi chiederle come immaginano giovani la Russia di domani, qual è la loro percezione dell'Unione Europea e quale ruolo, secondo loro, l'Unione concretamente potrà avere nella definizione di questo futuro. Grazie.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think that primarily what the citizens of the European Union can do is speak more about it. The more information we can spread out, the more Putin and his regime will understand that it's actually talked about and no one's forgetting about my father and his colleagues and what they're doing. What the European Parliament and the governments actually can do is, of course, like I said in my speech, and like Leonid has mentioned, is actually target the elite in the Russian government. It's not enough to make a list of judges who put my father behind bars. They answer to Putin and people below him, which is why we need to target mainly the officials and for all of the citizens of the European Union who are watching and people all over the world. Speaking about it, tweeting about it, mentioning it to your parents who don't have access to internet, it all helps. Anything possible, just don't stay silent about it. If one country becomes, if a country like Russia, the largest country in the world, it's in Europe, if there are inhumane treatments in Russia, what can stop from, what can we expect from other European countries not to happen in? It can happen to any country, to any society, and if we work together, we can help the whole world to become a more ideal Western European society. Thank you.
Sì, grazie a Daria, grazie a Leonid. È stato veramente un onore oggi averli qui al Parlamento Europeo e ribadire il messaggio per quanto riguarda la difesa dei principi fondamentali. Volevo ringraziare tutti voi per questo anno così complicato, avete seguito il Parlamento Europeo, vi ringrazio, ma volevo farvi anche gli auguri per il prossimo anno e per le feste di Natale e per le festività Credo che sarà un anno particolarmente intenso e quindi avremo bisogno di raccontarlo all'opinione pubblica nella maniera più libera possibile. Grazie.